It's you. Stop for a moment and listen carefully. What I am about to say is not for the crowd around you. It is for the place in you that has been waiting quietly for a very long time. You have been carrying a pressure no one can see. You keep moving, keep answering, keep showing up, but inside you feel as if something is gathering, as if your life is standing at the edge of a sentence that has not been finished yet. People around you may think you are simply tired or busy or distracted. They do not know that you are listening for a signal you cannot explain. And tonight I'm going to name what has been happening. By the time we close, you will recognize the signs that have been repeating in your days, the one pattern underneath them, and the deeper reason your spirit has been so uneasy. You will understand why certain doors feel close and yet not open, why certain memories have lost their warmth, and why your heart keeps turning towards something you cannot fully describe. Stay with me, because this reaches all the way to the place where your life begins to make sense. What follows is not a vague comfort. It is a recognition. It is the kind of message that meets you where your questions have been living and places light on what you have been calling confusion. You will see why the same hour keeps finding you. You will see why your spirit reacts before your mind has words. You will see why what once felt normal now feels thin and distant. And you will see why this message found you exactly when it did, as if it had been waiting at the door before you ever arrived. This is not random. This is not a passing emotional wave. This is an appointment, and the timing matters more than you know. There are moments when a life is touched so quietly that only the one living it notices, and then there are moments when that quiet touch begins to repeat itself until you can no longer pretend it means nothing. You have felt that repetition. In the smallest ways, it has been insisting on your attention. A thought returns when you are alone. A memory comes back with no warning. A verse, a phrase, a number, a name, a feeling, all of it seeming to arrive with the same invisible pressure. Something has been happening to you, and it has not been trying to frighten you. It has been trying to wake you. You have noticed that the same hour keeps calling you awake, not always with fear, sometimes with a strange alertness, as if your inner world opens a little before dawn while everything outside is still. You lie there, aware that you are awake for a reason you cannot name. It is not a meaningless interruption. It is the first sign that your spirit is refusing to stay numb. And maybe you have told yourself that it is only stress, only habit, only the body forgetting how to rest. But you keep noticing that when that hour comes, something in you is listening, something in you is standing at attention, something in you knows that silence at that hour is not empty, it is full. You have also felt sudden waves of emotion that do not match the day you are having. One moment you are fine, and the next you feel a heaviness or a tenderness or a grief that seems to have traveled from somewhere older than the present moment. There is no obvious cause, no argument, no event, no visible trigger strong enough to explain it. Yet the wave still comes, it rises, it passes, and afterward you are left with that same question. What was that? That is one of the clearest signs. Not that something is wrong with you, that something in you is no longer asleep enough to ignore itself. The feeling is not punishment. It is not instability. It is a signal that your inner life is changing before your outer life has caught up. You may have also noticed that conversations you once kept out of duty now feel hollow in your mouth. Words that used to hold warmth no longer do. You can sit with people you care about and still feel a distance that is hard to explain. It is not that you hate them. It is not that you are angry. It is that your old language no longer fits your current soul. That can make you feel guilty if you are not careful. You start wondering whether you have become cold, whether you have become difficult, whether something in you is breaking. But what if the truth is gentler than that? What if the conversations are not failing because you failed? What if they are thinning because you have outgrown the part of you that needed them in that shape? And then there are the repeated numbers, the recurring patterns, the quiet little convergences that appear in places that have no business agreeing with one another. You see a sequence, then see it again later in a different place, then again in a way that would be easy to dismiss if it had only happened once. But it keeps happening. It keeps arriving. It keeps placing a hand on your attention. When that kind of repetition shows up, it is easy to search for a technical explanation and stop there. Yet your spirit does not receive it as mere coincidence. It receives it as emphasis, as if life itself keeps underlining the same line because you have not yet let it sink all the way in. So hear this clearly. These signs are not there to punish you. They are there to confirm you. The waking hour is not a threat. It is an invitation. The emotional wave is not proof that you are losing your footing. It is proof that your old footing is no longer the only place you can stand. The hollow conversation is not a failure of your heart. It is the evidence that your heart has changed shape. The repeating numbers are not random decoration. They are a quiet insistence that something is being marked in you. You are not unraveling. You are being recalibrated. Take a breath with me. Let that land without defending yourself against it. There are truths that do not ask for permission, only recognition. If even one of those details just landed in you, if your shoulders dropped at any point while you were hearing this, type the number 888 in the comments. That is the frequency of overflow, the sign that a release is already moving where you could not force it. Type 888, then come right back to me. Because beneath those signs, there is something even more precise. Beneath the repetition, beneath the intensity, beneath the inward stirring, there is one pattern that has been shaping the way you live without asking your consent. And the moment you see that pattern, everything above it begins to make sense. Beneath those signs is a pattern of reaching with old hands. You keep extending yourself toward what matters, but you do it the way someone reaches for a door that no longer opens inward. You keep applying devotion to a place that can no longer receive it in the old way. You keep trying to force movement from a life that is asking for surrender, not strain. That is the pattern. You are not lazy. You are not faithless. You are overusing an old method that once helped you survive. You have lived for a long time, as if effort itself could guarantee arrival. So you pushed harder when the path became unclear. You stayed longer when something was already finished. You explained yourself more when silence would have been wiser. You kept performing strength in places where your soul was already asking to be laid down. This pattern can look noble from the outside. People may praise your resilience. They may call you dependable, steady, devoted, strong, and some of that may be true. But you know the hidden cost of it. You know how much of your energy has gone into carrying what was never meant to remain on your back forever. It has shown up in many forms. You hold conversations together that should have ended long ago. You keep replaying decisions as if more thought will produce a different past. You keep waiting for a certain person, a certain moment, a certain condition to finally make everything feel right. You keep believing that if you are just a little more patient, a little more available, a little more understanding, the resistance will dissolve. Yet the resistance does not dissolve because the pattern is not about effort alone. It is about misdirected loyalty. You have been loyal to what is familiar, even when the familiar has stopped feeding your life. That is why the ache feels so private. You are not only tired from doing too much, you are tired from doing too much in the wrong direction for too long. And I need you to hear this without turning it into shame. It was never your fault that you learned this pattern. You did what many people do when they are trying to hold together a world that did not know how to hold them back. You became useful. You became alert. You became the one who noticed, the one who fixed, the one who carried, the one who stayed awake. That posture protected you once. It kept things from collapsing while you were younger, while you were unseen, while you were still learning what the world expected from you. but what protected you then can imprison you now if you never question it. This is why the cost has felt so silent. The pattern does not always look like disaster. Sometimes it looks like competence. Sometimes it looks like being the one who can manage. Sometimes it looks like never fully resting, because resting would force you to feel how much you have been carrying alone. The cost is not only exhaustion, it is the erosion of your instinct. The longer you stay inside this pattern, the less you trust the quiet, knowing that tells you when something is complete. The more you override your own sense of timing, the more you teach your soul to ignore itself. And when a soul ignores itself long enough, it begins to call that numbness maturity. But it is not maturity. It is fatigue disguised as virtue. Stay with me, because there is a layer underneath this one, and it explains why the pattern took root so deeply in the first place. I keep seeing the same image for you, and I am going to stay with it because it carries the truth better than abstraction ever could. Imagine an old courtyard behind a house you have always lived in, but never fully entered. The front rooms are familiar. The hallways are familiar. The noises of daily life are familiar. But beyond all that, hidden from ordinary attention, there is a courtyard at the center of the place. It was built to receive light. It was built to hold stillness. It was built so the inner life of the house would have a place to breathe. But over time, something happened there. The gate was left unattended. The stones gathered dust. The plants grew in the wrong directions. The fountain, once clear, began to run quiet. Not broken exactly, just neglected. Not destroyed exactly, just covered. And because you were living in the house, you adapted to the neglected courtyard without naming it. You learned to walk around what was no longer tended. You learned not to expect the fountain to sing. You learned to believe that the dust was part of the architecture. So you built your life around a center that was waiting to be remembered. That courtyard is your inner place of receiving. It is where clarity was meant to move. It is where peace was meant to gather. It is where the voice inside you was meant to echo without distortion. But at some point long ago, that place was treated as if it mattered less than the outer rooms. And once you believe that about the center of your own life, you start living from the edges. The world then trains you to value noise over depth. It rewards the visible parts of you. It notices what you produce. It praises what you hold together. And slowly, without anyone announcing it, the courtyard is forgotten. You keep the house standing while the place of living becomes dust. That is what was done to you in many small ways. Not necessarily by cruelty alone, sometimes by pressure, sometimes by expectation, sometimes by the simple fact that no one around you knew how to protect the quieter center in you. So your inner courtyard was left to survive on its own. And a courtyard left alone does what any living place does. It adjusts, it waits, it dims. That dimming is not the end of the story, but it is the reason the pattern became so convincing. When the center is dimmed, the edges have to do all the work. You become outwardly effective and inwardly divided. You become capable and disconnected. You become the person who can be relied on, while privately wondering why your own life feels so far away. Yet even now the courtyard is not gone. The dust is not the same thing as absence. The silence is not the same thing as death. The neglected place still belongs to you, and something has begun to stir there again. A little movement in the leaves, a little brightness on the stone, a little sound where there had been none. This is why the signs came first. They are the first footsteps back into the courtyard. They are the soft noise of a place remembering its own purpose. They are not demanding that you perform. They are asking you to notice. If that image just settled somewhere deep in you, if you can feel the courtyard before you can explain it, type the words, "I am here." Let those words mark the place where the recognition has landed. Type it, then come right back to me. Because the return is not a list of tasks. It is a coming home to what was always waiting under the dust. You do not have to build a new center. You have to return to the one that was quietly preserved beneath everything that tried to cover it. You do not need to earn that return. You do not need to prove you are worthy of it. You do not need to arrange the perfect mood, the perfect routine, the perfect evidence. The return begins the moment you stop treating your inner life like a field that must be conquered and start treating it like a place that must be tended. There are two simple anchors I want to name, not as homework, but as mercy. The first is what I call the morning seal. When you wake, before you hand your attention to everything waiting for you, sit still long enough to remember that your inner courtyard is not a storage room. It is a sacred place of receiving. Do not rush into proving your value. Do not begin by reaching outward. Begin by standing still long enough to let your spirit know you are present. A quiet morning is not laziness when it is used to restore order. It is stewardship. The second is what I call the frequency audit. Once in the day, before you answer the next demand, ask yourself which voices are calling you from the courtyard and which voices are only calling you back into the dust. Notice what restores you, what drains you, what expands your breathing, what collapses it. You are not being asked to become suspicious of everyone. You are being asked to become honest about what nourishes the center and what only keeps the edges busy. These are small practices, but they are not small in consequence. They are ways of treating the inner place as real again. And when you do that, you begin to notice that the old compulsion to perform starts losing its authority. You do not need to wrestle the whole pattern down in one night. You only need to stop feeding it with unconscious loyalty. Steward the courtyard. Do not chase it. Tend the fountain. Do not force the rain. Guard the center. Do not worship the noise. When you live this way, the return is gentle at first. You begin to recognize the difference between urgency and guidance. You begin to hear the difference between what is loud and what is true. You begin to notice that some of the things you thought were responsibilities were only habits of fear wearing responsible clothes. And as that clarity grows, the house inside you changes. The courtyard gets light again. The stones remember warmth. The air moves differently. What was dimmed begins to breathe. That is why I keep speaking to the part of you that is tired of being managed by your own pressure. You are not being called to another round of strain. You are being called to a deeper order, a quieter one, a truer one. And right there, in that quiet, you may already feel the need to acknowledge what you have heard. Not with noise, not with performance, with the simple yes that a soul gives when it knows it has been seen. If something in this message confirmed what your spirit already knew, let your like be your amen without words, not as a metric, as an agreement that what was named here was named correctly. Let that settle. There is no need to rush past the weight of recognition. There is also someone coming to mind for you right now, even as I speak. You can feel that face in your mind, because this message is not only for your own seeing. It is also for the one who has been carrying too much in silence, the one who looks composed while running on emptiness, the one who keeps saying they are fine while their inner courtyard has gone unvisited for too long. Maybe that person is quietly tired, but too dignified to ask for help. Maybe they are secretly seeking, opening and closing the same door in their heart without telling anyone they are doing it. Maybe they are holding a posture nobody sees, the smile, the competence, the calm, while something deeper keeps asking to be remembered. That is the person whose face has come to mind for a reason. Do not treat that as an accident. Treat it as delivery. What reached you tonight is not meant to stop with you. Some things are received so they can be carried with care to someone else who would know exactly what to do with them the moment they hear them. That is how mercy travels, quietly, precisely, by appointment. And now the seal is forming across everything we have walked through together. You have seen the signs, you have named the pattern, you have touched the old courtyard and felt the dust without believing it is your destiny. You have begun to understand that the return is already underway. So I speak this over you now, not as a wish, but as a recognition. You are confirmed. You are remembered. You are not too late. You are not behind. You are being gathered. You are being steadied. You are being led back to the center that still belongs to you. You are being restored in the place where your life was quietest and truest. You are learning to receive again. You are learning to trust what is real. Right now, all across the world, there are others hearing this same recognition in their own way, in their own hour, in their own hidden courtyard. They are not less alone than you are. They are not more chosen than you are. They are simply part of a movement that does not announce itself loudly, because what is deepest rarely needs to shout in order to be true. You are part of that gathering now, and the quiet of it is exactly what makes it holy. I am chosen. I am here. I am home. Walk gently over what has been revealed. Hold loosely what was never yours to carry forever. Let the center in you breathe again. Let the dust be the beginning of remembrance, not the end of the story. It is sealed. What you are feeling is not confusion. It is recognition beginning to gather strength in you, and it has brought you to the point where the old way can no longer carry the weight of your life. You have spent too long pretending that pressure is normal. You have stood in rooms where your body was present, but your spirit was already listening somewhere else. You have smiled through moments that should have felt heavy, and you have called that strength because nobody taught you a gentler name for endurance. But I am not letting you call it by the old name tonight. The truth is that the sign was never the storm. The truth is that the sign was never the ache. The truth is that the sign was never the distance, the silence, the repeated hour, the deep inward pull, or the feeling that something in you had crossed a threshold without asking for permission. Those things were the language. They were never the enemy. The enemy was the habit of ignoring what they meant. And now you are here, at the point where meaning is no longer willing to stay hidden behind symptoms. You do not need more noise. You need the courage to let the signs speak all the way through. You need the courage to stop making your own soul repeat itself in order to get your attention. So let this settle. What has been pressing on you is not trying to break you down. It is trying to break you open. What has been circling in your days is not there to humiliate you. It is there to return you to yourself. What has been thinning out in your old world is not failure. It is separation. It is mercy. It is the quiet removal of what can no longer carry the weight of who you are becoming. You may not have words for all of this yet, but your body already knows. Your spirit already knows. That is why the old distractions feel less convincing now. That is why the old explanations do not stay on your skin. That is why, even when you try to go back to the way things were, some part of you refuses to fit inside them again, and that refusal is holy. It is the first sign that you are not meant to remain where you have been living inwardly. There is a deeper place in you that is calling for order, for tenderness, for truth without performance. There is a center in you that does not want dramatic answers. It wants the real one. That is why the pressure has increased. That is why the old methods have become exhausting. That is why what used to soothe you now feels thin. Your inner life is insisting on a different kind of honesty, and you are no longer able to pretend you have not heard it. This is not a collapse. This is a summons. This is not emptiness. This is clearing. This is not punishment. This is preparation. And the most important thing I can tell you is that the preparation is happening exactly where you thought you were falling behind. The place you called delay may be the place where your life is being stripped of everything false. The place you called uncertainty may be the place where your true voice is beginning to move again. So do not rush past what you feel. Do not explain it away because you are used to being practical. Do not minimize the inner tremor because it does not arrive in a form other people can easily applaud. Some of the deepest movements in a life begin as a whisper that only the heart can hear, and yours has been hearing. You are not making this up. You are not overthinking because you are weak. You are not restless for no reason. Something in you has been walking toward the edge of an older pattern, and every real sign has been pointing you there. That is why you feel both unsettled and strangely accompanied. Something is leaving, something is arriving. The old arrangement cannot remain intact because you cannot remain divided forever. Now I want to speak more plainly. The pattern underneath the signs has been one of overholding. You have kept too much. You have carried what should have been named, what should have been released, what should have been surrendered, what should have been allowed to end. You have mistaken carrying for care, and you have mistaken endurance for agreement. That pattern has touched nearly every part of your life. It has made you respond when silence would have been truer. It has made you keep doors open that should have been gently closed. It has made you answer the pressure of other people's expectations as if their urgency were your assignment. You have been tending what has already finished, and because you are faithful, you kept tending it long after the season had changed. That is why the weariness has felt so deep. It is not ordinary tiredness. It is the fatigue of trying to keep a life coherent around things that no longer belong together. It is the exhaustion of living as though every burden must be honored simply because it once had value. But something that once mattered can still be complete. Something that once protected you can still be released. And you have been afraid, perhaps without naming it, that if you stop holding so much, something will fall apart. Yet what if the opposite is true? What if the thing that falls apart is only the false structure you have been using to survive? What if the real thing underneath has been waiting all along for your hands to open? What if the pressure is not proof that you are failing, but proof that you are finally strong enough to stop pretending? That is the turning point. Not more force, not more pushing, not more explaining, a different relationship to what you carry, because there is a layer beneath this one, and it goes deeper than habit. It reaches into the place where the pattern first learned to speak. Imagine that courtyard again, because the image